Hello, my name is Chris, and I'm a podcast producer and creative director. And recently I presented a workshop at the Publisher Podcast Summit, showing folks who wanted to know what equipment they should get to start their podcast, what their options were. And so this video is a kind of summary of the key takeaways from that session, but also perhaps a more alive version of the handout that attendees got on the day. So here are then my 10 commitments. 10 rules really that I would give folk when they're choosing kit. This isn't really a shopping list. This is more the things you should be thinking about as you're buying stuff to record podcasts with. Commandment number 1. There is no such thing as the best mic. There's only good mics for particular contexts and settings. And spending more doesn't necessarily get you better sound. Number 2, podcasts have traditionally favoured a kind of intimate, clean, broadcasty sound, and that's what a lot of equipment recommendations will be geared towards. But think about your format and think about if recording, for example, on location somewhere and bringing in those sort of ambient sounds of the location, specifically where you are, might make your show more engaging. Number 3, do not try to use more than one USB microphone connected into a computer at once, or indeed multiple USB microphones connected into multiple computers in the same room. USB mics are really good and flexible for situations in which everyone is remote for a recording. But if you try to record multiples in one place, you will have difficulty synchronizing them, especially considering the effects of audio drift, where things get slightly out of sync the longer things go on, or at least they can. If you're going to have more than one person in the same location, choose microphones that connect up over XLR and then connect them into a dedicated recorder or interface. You should, for here's number 4, strongly prefer recording everything on each voice onto their own track. That way, not only can you level their voices better in post to deal with somebody who's a bit quietly spoken or loudly spoken or just settings that are different on the microphones, but also it means that you can fix and repair individual voices in a way that doesn't affect others. So for example, I've got quite a deep voice. You might want to cut some of that low resonant frequency out of my voice to brighten it up, sharpen it up, make it easier to listen to. But if you did that to everybody's voice, if they were all recorded onto a single stereo track, it would make people whose voices aren't as deep as mine sound a bit thin and harsh. Rule 5. Unless you're prepared to sound treat a space, putting up rock wool or foam insulation or otherwise making a space non-resonant, then you should be almost certainly preferring dynamic mics over condenser mics, even if they both have what's called a cardioid pickup pattern, where they're very sensitive only in one specific area. Some microphones you talk into the end of and some the side of, so just read the manual and make sure you're choosing the right thing. Number 6, precise positioning of the microphone is really important, and so a movable arm like this one is key to getting the microphone exactly where you need it, because what you don't want is to make yourself move to where the microphone is, because you'll lose focus and drift away from it. Get yourself comfortable and make sure the microphone has come to you. On that note, mic technique, the ability to work well with a microphone, is a specialized skill, but it's one you should be developing. The easiest way to make sure that you are working well with your microphone is to use it for everything. Even if you feel like a bit of a prick sitting on a Teams call with a big microphone like this, get over that slight awkwardness and just do it. Have a prepared script for how you're going to react to it, because every time you go to call the new person, they'll comment on it. Mine is, if this is what I do for Zoom calls, imagine how good your podcast will sound. But work with it and monitor yourself. That's why, even though I don't need to have headphones in just now, because I'm not listening to anybody else talking, I have my headphones on. I can hear myself in my ears in real time, and that way, that if I drift away from the microphone slightly, I hear myself dropping off in the headphones. And if I was doing bad technique where we had plosives, for example, on the microphone, then I could ensure that I could hear myself doing it, and I would pull back the microphone very slightly. So listen to yourself as you talk. Rule number 8, microphones can pick up handling noise. That really unpleasant. It's not just like a sort of tappy, tappy, tap sound. You get a really thump, thump, thump sound coming through, which is unpleasant. You can ameliorate this with training by getting people not to touch the table surface the microphone is sitting on or attached to. And you can, indeed in post, improve it slightly by cutting out some of the lowest frequencies in the track. but ideally you want the microphone to be in a shock mount. This one isn't. This microphone, I haven't found a shock mount for it, but the Rode Procasters I would normally use in a studio setting do have a very good shock mount, and I recommend putting a microphone in it to deaden the sound coming up from the table the microphone is attached to. Alternatively, have the microphone on a floor stand or attached to a surface that is not the table that your participants are sat around and possibly touching. I mentioned plosives earlier. That's the annoying PBT sounds you get in some microphones. They are quite unpleasant to listen to. This is rule number 9, and so you do need to be close to a dynamic microphone like this one to be heard, but you run the risk of plosives. So you should do what I am doing here, which is to say that the microphone is angled at 45 degrees away from my mouth. Imagine looking down like a bird on top of me. You'll see the microphone slanting away at 45 degrees, and I'm talking across it. That way you're minimizing PBT sounds. The last one is you should avoid things like Zoom, Teams, Skype for recording podcasts unless you're really in a bind and that's the only option you have, in part because it degrades the sound, but also because you don't have as much flexibility in editing and post, because in most cases, not all, but in most cases, you will have everybody on a single track, so that even if 4 people are on beautiful dynamic microphones like this and sound great, and somebody's on a manky old hissy Dell laptop internal microphone, that hiss will infect the entire recording. So really, you want everybody to be recorded on individual tracks, even when they're remote. And there are dedicated solutions like Riverside, Squadcast, Zencastr, and others that will allow that to happen. The other advantage to them is that they record locally, so that if you've got 6 people on a podcast spread all over the world, connected through the internet, as soon as the producer presses the big red button to record, what happens is that each of the 6 computers on that recording will each start recording their individual person themselves at their end, so that even if the internet goes a bit flaky or even drops out entirely, the audio is still recorded. What's more, because it's being locally recorded, not being sent over the internet, it's not being compressed for data, compressed in a data size sense, and so it will generally sound much, much better. You usually get high quality lossless wave recordings rather than manky MP3s or AAC recordings. Those then are my 10 guides, 10 rules for the kind of decisions you want to make around buying kit for recording a podcast. So they're not specific kit recommendations, although if you're there on the day, you got a handout with those on, but they are general principles that it's worth thinking about when you're making decisions about what equipment to buy to record your podcast. Good luck.